This video is brought to you by Squarespace, an all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. I think over the years, I've become much more paranoid about being filmed in public.
Can you name me a country that's never been to war?
If you were canceled, what would you be canceled for?
What makes you confident?
Hi, miss.
Can I ask you what you're listening to?
Oh, God.
Like, I know at this point these videos are probably staged, but the idea of someone unexpectedly shoving a microphone in my face and asking me what my favorite song is nightmare-inducing. And I speak as someone who does put myself on camera quite a lot. For me, I think it's both, my questionable music taste, as well as the loss of agency. I could be running an errand and having a bad day, but yet I'm getting accosted to do a performance, combined with the fact that showing visible discomfort can be read as rudeness, which would then be used as fodder to supply any existing hater narratives about me. For example, in October, a paparazzi account called Events for You posted a TikTok of Cara Delevingne waiting in line for the Stella McCartney show during Paris Fashion Week. The Daily Mail Australia reposted the video with the caption, "Cara Delevingne is left fuming as she is forced to wait in line after not being recognized at the Stella McCartney show in Paris." Of course, the comment section was flooded with people expressing disapproval at her behavior and celebrating the idea of her getting humbled by, having to wait in line. Meanwhile, we don't actually know why she was annoyed. Maybe she was annoyed by the fact that there's a guy taking a video of her. The video even ends with him following her after the show. I feel like that's pretty annoying. She could also be annoyed by the fact that fashion shows are a disorganized mess, and I'm assuming she's getting paid to sit in the front row, so she's technically there for work and trying to get where she needs to be before the show starts. And, we can criticize the hierarchy established at fashion shows where some people are going to be more important to sit than others, but she didn't create that system. Anyways, I'm not even trying to die on the hill defending Cara, but it just brought to mind how little faith or even tolerance people want to give to strangers on the internet. In terms of my own behavior, I've become a bit anal about how I act in public. So, for example, I've stopped gossiping about industry stuff or people if I'm in a crowded space because I don't want my words to get regurgitated on Reddit forums. Or worse, I wouldn't want someone citing they heard this inside scoop from Mina and then I can get in trouble. I know I'm not a big celebrity, and so I might be feeling more paranoid than I need to be, but I think we've unfortunately reached a point where anyone's everyday existence can be farmed for content with or without them knowing. As far back as 2021, a TikToker made a viral video where he shared gossip he overheard about a woman named Marissa.
I hate to be the one to stick my nose where it doesn't belong, but if your name's Marissa, please listen up. I just walked by your friends, and I need to tell you that the weekend you're away is not the only time that they could do their birthday party. They are choosing to do it the weekend you're away, and you need to know. TikTok, help me find Marissa.
Okay, so my name is Marissa. Hi.
Look, it's not nice, but I don't think that this friendship squabble needed to be addressed on the public stage. Also, if I was Marissa, I personally would not want to find out my friends are making plans without me through TikTok either, and to see thousands of people commenting about it. Back in 2023, Clarissa Jan Lim wrote a BuzzFeed News article called "What Happens When You Become Viral Content Without Your Consent," where she uses the term panopticon to describe this new media environment. Everything is content for the creating, and everyone is a non-player character in my world. The Panopticon is a prison design idea created by Jeremy Bentham. The building features a windowed tower at the center of a circular building. Cells surround the tower, and the watchman in the tower is able to see into the cells at all times. However, the inmates in the cells are not able to see the watchman. Therefore, if you're an inmate, you have no idea when you're being watched. In terms of the TikTok world, it means you have no idea when you're being filmed or when someone is going to make a video about something that you said. As Elizabeth Lopato writes for The Verge, living in the Panopticon means every person you meet is also someone who can ruin your life.
I have to get all sorts of groceries today.
Pardon?
I have to get all sorts of groceries today.
According to social theorist Michel Foucault, the Panopticon induces the inmates to enter a state of conscious and permanent visibility, leading them to be on their best behavior at all times in case they're being watched. The way that Foucault's idea translates to these modern times is that If you could be seen and recorded at any time, perhaps you will preemptively alter your behavior. I mean, that's what I'm explaining happened to me. I don't know if anyone's listening into my conversation, but I'm going to act as if they are. And the bottom line I'm trying to get at is it's so dysregulating to live in this kind of socially induced surveillance state. And we should not be living like this. In my opinion, Squarespace is the best platform to host your website. It's the easiest to use with tons of customization options from pre-made templates, color palettes, to a stacked font library, and no prior coding knowledge necessary. I mean, look how cute my book club website is. I think it's looking quite chic for someone who doesn't know anything about website design. I know a lot of people use their website for their business, and Squarespace has got you covered with all the necessary analytic tools for that as well. You can see who's checking you out and for how long they're spending on your page, where they're based, etc. If you're an artist, Squarespace offers professional portfolio designs so you can display your projects in customizable galleries and add password-protected pages to share private work with clients. I'm using a gallery page to display all the books I've chosen for my book club. Check out squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/Mina to get 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Before there was TikTok, there was Candid Camera. A show that many argue was the father of reality TV. The show's format featured footage taken by a hidden camera of everyday people caught in pranks orchestrated by the show's creator and host, Alan Funt. For example, Candid Camera once had actress Carol Burnett ask strapping young men she passed by to help carry her suitcase. What these men didn't know was that the suitcase was filled with cement. The show first aired as a radio program in 1948, marketed as Candid Microphone, but then moved over to television the next year under the new name Candid Camera. Every episode of Candid Camera was only about 2 to 3 minutes long, about the length of a TikTok. Harrison Engel, who interviewed Funt in 1965, says that all of Candid Camera scenes can be organized into 4 categories. 1, pure observation of ordinary actions, like a man alone in a room admiring himself in a mirror. 2, an expose of some trick of a common trade, like the department store method of changing clerks for customers who can't be sold or gotten rid of. I honestly didn't even know this was a thing. And 3, the altered observation, such as a white-gloved policeman elaborately waving on traffic, though it looks like he's doing a dance instead. And 4, an illustration of human frailties and characteristics when people are faced with small crises. For example, Funt once carefully aggravated a fruit seller by pinching and sampling the merchandise. Fred Nadis describes the significance of this last point. Funt's creation of these small crises anticipated the work that social psychologist Leon Festinger in the late 1950s termed cognitive dissonance. Such communications research examined how subjects handled the unexpected. If what is going on is baffling or contradicts a person's received wisdom, ethics, or common sense, how does she or he resolve the situation? How do people manage to reduce the dissonance and related anxiety? Other crises sequences offered sharp social commentary. For example, this was an earlier episode when Candid Camera was still Candid Microphone, and I guess because of the success of the episode, that's why they ended up recreating the situation for television. But this was the original setup. Funt calls up a locksmith. He says, "I lost the key to a lock. When you get the chance, would you stop in here and open it for me?" The locksmith comes over to discover that Funt's secretary is chained to her desk, and the padlock to her chain is what he's being asked to open. Funt writes about recording the scene in his 1952 book, Eavesdropper at Large, and he talks about how the locksmith was just treating this job like any other rush job. He didn't seem particularly alarmed to the fact that a woman is being chained to her work desk. So Funt continues prodding. "I usually let her out to lunch." And like this locksmith, he's clearly getting more disgruntled. Later on, after the locksmith successfully removes the chain, Funt says, "I'll have to get a new lock for that thing, I guess." And that's when the locksmith finally cracks. He says, "You mean you're going to chain her back again? Better not get caught doing it." Funt, "That's my business buddy. She gets paid well. It's a good job." Clearly, the locksmith is uncomfortable and judgmental about the situation, but he ultimately doesn't say anything more at the injustice. He definitely doesn't seem like he'll go and call the cops. He just goes, "Listen, if you're going to keep chaining her, I think you ought to get a rubber chain or something. I mean, rubber covered. The appeal of Candid Camera was, of course, voyeuristic. And if I'm allowed to say something controversial, it's fine to be a voyeur sometimes. Voyeurism reflects our natural curiosity and interest in other humans, and watching other people can teach us a lot about ourselves. For example, there's this one popular episode where these young kids are introduced to their new teacher, and they stage it so that the new teacher is a very attractive person of the opposite gender of the students who are getting interviewed. After the teacher leaves the classroom, the students blush and they talk amongst themselves excitedly. And when I was watching it, it brought me back to this sort of pure, unabashed joy of having a school crush and not really knowing what to do about it. Candid Camera episodes were also sometimes very funny. I think many of them still hold up to this day. For example, there's one where they put a few people in an elevator facing the rear, and then they see if this random guy gets peer pressured into facing the wrong way. Of course he does. Of course he does. As Harrison Engel explains further the appeal of the show, Funt seems to know what is news and where to point his camera. He has a strong sense of situation. Each sketch is short and highly memorable because of its inherent simplicity. Each has a clear premise. The show's catchphrase was, "Smile, you're on Candid Camera," a phrase that's been appropriated by stores to indicate to customers that there's camera surveillance afoot. The link between the show and surveillance overall makes sense, as this was the effect Funt was actually hoping for. As Nadis argues, Funt insisted on a stripped-down aesthetic for his show, with apparently only one camera recording a scene to give the audience a surveillance camera perspective. The audience, like the host, was a peeping Tom, engaged in fun that paralleled government surveillance and censorship. When people swore on the radio or screen, Funt's people would cut in a woman's voice sweetly saying, "Censored." Of course, not everyone was okay with this surveillance. Candid Camera came up during the McCarthy era, when concerns about privacy and conformity among Americans ran rampant. In 1947, just 1 year prior to Candid Microphone, the Truman administration established the National Security State Apparatus, which included the formation of the National Security Council and the CIA, as well as an expanded FBI with authority to run background checks on federal employees. It's unsurprising then that Funt's show would spark paranoia. J.M. Flagler recorded some of Funt's critics in The New Yorker in 1960. He includes the Berkshire Eagle, which wrote about Candid Microphone, noting, "With this new Machiavellian inspiration, radio crosses the last shadow of privacy." Funt, however, believed that the modern man goes too far if he expects total immunity from the all-devouring eye of the camera.
That's a camera. Listen, shake the camera in some way, will you?
See it moving?
Open the glass. Do something. She doesn't believe anything.
See him back there?
Would you tell me what this is?
He says, "The only types we bother are those who carry privacy to excess." I see this attitude now for sure. I think there are a lot of people who believe that anything recorded in a public space is allowed. And this is kind of true, legally speaking, but just because something is legal doesn't mean we should take it as gospel. The age of consent is 16, but that doesn't mean morally that 45-year-old men should be sexually involved with teenagers, right? In 2003, the first episode of Punk'd aired on MTV.
Here comes the show.
Tonight on Punk'd.
Punk'd was a hidden camera show hosted by Ashton Kutcher, and its whole MO was filming celebrities at the mercy of the show's orchestrated pranks. Originally, the show was actually called Harassment and was not limited to celebrity targets. But the first prank they attempted involved planting a fake dead body on a couple's bed at the Hard Rock Hotel. And it was disastrous. Afterwards, the couple ended up suing Kutcher, MTV, and the property in a $20 million lawsuit, claiming invasion of privacy, infliction of emotional distress, fraud, among other things. This led to the show shifting gears and focusing on celebrities. I think this focus on celebrities was successful in two ways. For the empaths of this world, when we're led to feel that this event won't seriously affect a person's life, then it makes it easier for us to consume the content for entertainment. And we actually know this event didn't seriously affect them because these recordings happened months before airing. And we've been seeing Hugh Jackman still acting in movies and attending red carpets, you know? Him believing he accidentally burned his friend's house down clearly was not a canon event for him.
She just got punked!
The other reason it was successful is because of Schadenfreude. I would say that compared to Candid Camera, which definitely had some episodes that act under the concept of interesting social experiments, Punkt was mostly just about Schadenfreude, an effect of the reality TV genre in general. Schadenfreude, by the way, is a German word to mean pleasure derived from someone else's misfortune. I mean, who wouldn't want to watch Justin Timberlake have a mental breakdown because the IRS is coming to take all his stuff? That is Schadenfreude, my friends. The Schadenfreude people feel is further heightened because these celebrities are rich and powerful. It functions as a sense of justice and comeuppance. To be clear, it is an injustice that some people can easily acquire wealth and fame while others barely eke out a living. Similar to the phenomenon I mentioned with watching Eat the Rich media in a previous video. Watching celebrities squirm can bring us a small modicum of comfort in an imbalanced world. However, John Doyle argues, even though we may be laughing at the celebrities on the show itself still upholds celebrity culture and keeps the status of this class elevated above the masses. He explains in the Globe and Mail, Ashton Kutcher and his friends are the new gods, living in a utopian parallel universe that ordinary mortals can never enter. On Punkt, we're watching the gods play games and enjoy jokes at each other's expense. We are like flies to these people. We're watching wanton boys swat each other for sport, and we're meant to be agog. At the end of the day, I don't think Punkt was seriously offensive enough to set us back as a society, but it did heavily contribute to the 2000s zeitgeist, and specifically to the ongoing tenets of the decade, that of gleeful shaming, moral panics, and intrusive surveillance. The show also became a popular representation of the Schadenfreude in hidden camera entertainment, which has since spiraled out of control in more sinister ways. 1 year after Punkt, NBC aired To Catch a Predator, which Jimmy Kimmel described as Punkt for pedophiles. This was a hidden camera series that operated under the guise of serving justice. The targets were potential sexual predators who were lured into a sting house under the impression that they were going to have sex with a minor. The minor was played by a young-looking adult decoy who they had been chatting with online. Once these men entered the house, the host would confront them with his camera crew, and they would get arrested by law enforcement. Fry explains the appeal of this show. The revenge impulse surely plays a part in these gleeful responses, as one woman who has served as a decoy in pedophile sting operations tells documentarian David Ossett bluntly. It is fucking funny when a bad person gets what is coming to them. While I love to see justice doled out on predators, I also question whether or not this needs to be put on camera. I feel like once you put something up on camera and put it on TV, it transforms something, in this case justice, into a product. Fry explains, Catch functioned first and foremost as entertainment, which largely mooted its other vaunted missions: to serve justice, to get to the bottom of sexual pathology, to provide solace to abuse survivors, while also flattening the essential humanity of the show's subjects, turning troubled individuals' actions into a quasi-pornographic exhibit meant for an audience's voyeuristic titillation. Catch was characterized by a desire not just to document people's pain, but to indulge in and profit off of it. Ashton Kutcher went on the Chicks in the Office podcast in 2022, and during his interview, he talks about hosting Punkt. When I did the show, every single person that got Punkt signed a waiver and said, yes, you can air this. And I destroyed tapes on people, on anybody who said that you can't. Destroyed it. I don't talk about it, and that was a common respect that we had back then that no longer exists, where it's like everybody's got a camera, everybody's trying to film whatever, and they just post it as if that person gave them permission to just take their private life and make it public. I think there's a lot of interlocking reasons here for why people feel they can just shove a camera in someone's face and use it for content. For one thing, social media completely changed people's relationships to documentation. Even in the early days of social media, people would be posting all kinds of mundane things online. I think, I would announce in a Facebook status every time I was hanging out with a friend or every time I watched a movie. The people would post pictures of, pizza slices they were eating on Instagram, edited with the Rio Grande filter, of course. Twitter was just a total cesspool of random shower thoughts. But the effect is that once you become used to documenting everything that you do, even the more mundane stuff, it starts to feel strange when you don't document. It becomes your way of verifying your experience, and it becomes normalized en masse. If someone's recording their experience at a restaurant that I'm eating at, I just accept that I'm probably kind of looking crazy in the background of their video. We're used to the presence of smartphones everywhere, and it becomes a worse habit when people are able to monetize this content. Suddenly, your life could just change if you just happen to take a video of everything that you've done in a day. Emma Chamberlain started off on YouTube taking, mundane videos of herself making coffee and driving around her hometown, and now she has multiple businesses and a home worth over $4 million. I've always thought that, YouTube was the best social media in the sense that it requires less frequent output. I don't know how shorts will factor in the future, but for now, I think people understand that it's fine if a person they follow posts once a month, right? Right? However, TikTok and Instagram require fast turnaround times for posting because they encourage less produced, shorter content. And this pressures people into filming everything they do every single day. The problem is that in their pursuit for getting as much content as possible, many people start to forget that other people may have different boundaries about being on camera. Elizabeth Galino wrote an article for The Cut earlier this year, aptly titled, "Please Stop Filming Your Workout Classes," and cites in it the many cases where an influencer has propped up their phone to record their workouts without the consent of the other people in the class. She quotes one woman, Kimberly, who saw herself in the background of a stranger's video while, scrolling on TikTok. And Kimberly said, "To me, it was jarring. I just felt so large and I literally spiraled for a week. Just my body, I don't want to see that. It just made me feel bad." The proliferation of TikTok has also made it so it's never been easier to garner an audience. And with that, it's more difficult than ever to stand out. The result is that content creators have gradually leaned into clickbait and rage bait to generate as many views and as much engagement as possible, so that the algorithm pushes out their videos to the highest number of people. As law professor Mark Bartholomew explains to BuzzFeed News, these entities like TikTok, they're not rewarding thoughtful curation and documenting. They're rewarding sexy, controversial, snarky videos that generate views. I think people have these human impulses to curate, to document, to share, and the platform does help you do that, but at the same time, I think it pushes these darker impulses as well. Yeah, I remember a while ago, there was this one guy who asked a question in his college class, and someone sitting behind him recorded it.
Could a three-dimensional frequency table be used to display more complex data sets?
And all these comments came through, judging him for the question he asked, They claimed he was being pretentious. And basically people were projecting their own ideas of who they thought he was just from a single moment caught in camera. And he didn't have any kind of following, but he posted a video responding to the comments saying that, they were hurtful. And I just felt really bad for him when I was watching this video. He was on the verge of tears. And even if he was trying to flex in class, as accusers claimed, is that a crime worth cyberbullying someone over? I mean, be real. I think at least with Candid Camera and Punk'd, their show formats were based around the idea that the host, Alan Funt or Ashton Kutcher, were purposely manipulating scenarios to get reactions from their targets. Meanwhile, these TikTok documentarians function more like the people of Walmart bloggers, in that they're just trying to capture normal people being weird or off-putting. And this is honestly, in my opinion, more offensive because it creates a story that these victims getting filmed are just like this and they should be laughed at on the public stage. Freakish, mean-spirited behavior on its own. But there's also been now cases where filmers will actually manipulate the narrative to get even more engagement. And of course, they're not transparent about that manipulation. Clarissa Jan Lim recounts the story for BuzzFeed. An artist named Timothy Goodman in 2022 was filmed as he was waiting to cross the street. And the woman who was filming him, her name is Ellery Lee, she overlaid the caption onto her video, "When he texts you that he can't do dinner because he's out of town for work, but you see him crossing the streets while you're in your Uber." However, Goodman and Lee didn't actually know each other. The entire situation was completely fabricated by her. Yet the video went viral, and unsuspecting commenters lashed out, attacking Goodman for his appearance as a way to put him in his place for this imaginary behavior. Goodman explained in his own TikTok.
This is a viral video with hundreds of comments of people talking about how disgusting I look and how skinny I am and how she can do so much better. And I would just say that maybe we don't have to make fun of people's appearances on complete strangers online.
Lee has since deleted the video, and she told Lim that she didn't expect for the video to get back to the people who were in it, which is kind of a baseless non-apology. Because even if I didn't know it was happening, I just prefer if people didn't spin weird false narratives of who I am and attack me for my appearance. I can at least commend her for taking down the video, because so many people, even when proven wrong, will not delete their videos because they don't want to delete the views that they've gotten on it. The major problem, I think, is there's no way to regulate these videos. For traditional TV, you actually do need to get people to sign waivers before you're allowed to air the episode. Hence why Ashton Kutcher mentions that everyone featured on the show consented to be featured. Candid Camera likewise needed release forms, and likewise in their fact page talks about burning the footage that they weren't allowed to release. But I think, unfortunately, we're in a phase where we keep developing new technology, and yet we're delayed at developing any laws to check them. I remember listening to the Town podcast, and host Matt Bellany talks about these AI companies stealing content from studios to train their AI generation models, and how the mindset seems to be, ask for forgiveness, not permission. Take a look at the meta glasses trend. There's this one food TikToker, Elizabeth Eats NYC, who popularized the concept of filming with her meta glasses, but she recently faced pushback for, one, a video she made dining at an Israeli restaurant.
Try Israeli food before we all nuke each other into space.
And two, filming people without their knowledge or consent, as meta glasses are a somewhat new phenomenon and are more inconspicuous than carrying a phone around. To give you a sense, someone made a compilation of some uncomfortable moments in her videos where the subjects appear to clearly not know that she's filming them.
Do you work here, sir? I'm so excited. Estoy enojada.
Elizabeth told the New York Post, I think I'm being held to a standard that no other content creator has been held to before. I think it's interesting my videos are singled out for controversy, even though filming people in public has been standard practice since cameras were invented. My glasses have a blinking light to indicate recording. I now make sure anyone who's a main focus in a video is aware they're being recorded. I respect requests, and I've never posted someone who's asked not to be on camera. In Elizabeth's case, I think the internet came after her more because she also presents a double standard. She doesn't even show her own face in her videos. And with that, she explained, I'm like a normal person. I don't want to be this huge famous person that can't leave their apartment without these cameras in my face. I just basically want to lead a normal life and have peace and privacy. I feel like it's a crazy level of hypocrisy if you're able to understand your own desire for privacy and, your own anxiety about being filmed, but then don't extend that courtesy onto others. But regardless of Elizabeth's point of view, I think many people, especially people who are young and who have never experienced a life without smartphones, have come to expect that life is not private. Their attitudes echo Funt, who I mentioned earlier, said that being filmed in public is now just a part of modernity. I don't know, maybe being filmed is part of modernity, but I think we also need to practice some form of etiquette when we go about it, right? I think of the counterexample when people talk about the idea of filming themselves doing good deeds for strangers because it encourages other people to do good deeds in their own communities. Like, that might be true. However, this glosses over the fact that you still need to ask for consent before posting someone online. I'd argue that when you don't do that, we're robbing that person of any humanity, which in the end, reverses the altruistic act. For example, Harrison Pollock is an Australian TikToker with almost 4 million followers, and he once went viral for recording himself giving flowers to a woman at a shopping center. In his video, he approaches the woman and asks her to hold a bouquet of flowers as he puts his jacket on. Then he walks away, leaving the flowers with her. I hope this made her day better, heart emoji, he wrote in the caption, along with the hashtag wholesome. Of course, users flooded the comments with how sweet this gesture was. Honestly, probably if I stumbled across this video, I would have been like, that's nice. But in actuality, the woman who was filmed later told ABC Radio Melbourne that she never agreed to participate and she felt dehumanized by the encounter. She says, these artificial things are not random acts of kindness. He interrupted my quiet time, filmed and uploaded a video without my consent, turning it into something it wasn't, and I feel like he's making quite a lot of money through it. I mean, that's the other piece of this puzzle that makes this content uncomfortable. These people filming get to cash in on the ad revenue. The characters in their videos go unpaid. And for some of these accounts, they further capitalize by fully growing businesses out of surveillance. For example, influencers in the wild has their own board game. Dumois sells perfume. Joey Swole has his own brand of sauces. Professor of American culture Lisa Nakamura brought up in a UC Berkeley article on surveillance this interesting idea that younger people are aware that they're always on in public. And so when someone is acting out and gets caught doing so on camera, there's like a two-pronged negative reaction. One, for whatever they said or did, and two, for the fact that they don't know how to act in public or on camera. I'm very interested in this idea of being judged for a lack of social etiquette when in actuality, thrusting a camera in someone's face or secretly recording them is one of the bigger etiquette breaches. But because the person holding the camera is often not verbal in the video, they act as a sort of neutral documentarian. But documenting someone is not a neutral activity. It's why I think Cole Sprouse's Camera Duels project is really interesting. It's an Instagram account that he's been running for years, but he uses it to post photos of people taking photos of him. He said in an interview several years ago that the account started from pure existential rage. It was actually therapeutic for me. It took all the strangeness of those events, people taking pictures of me in the bathroom. Many of the people he posts take it in a lighthearted way. They even leave comments, saying this made their day or whatever. Since there's not really anything too embarrassing about getting caught taking a photo of a celebrity in the first place, I also wonder if people now take photos of him to get posted on his account. But I think sometimes his captions can be a little aggressive. And at the end of the day, he is a celebrity. So there is a hierarchy where any photo he posts of these strangers is going to get more attention than any photo that they post of him. So I don't think it's necessarily like a responsible experiment, but I think it poses an interesting question of who is the person holding the camera? And what happens when the subject turns the gaze back onto them? Would you take a video of someone if they were able to take a video of you? At the same time, I want to acknowledge that there are cases where capturing footage has ended up being a social good. For example, in his article on surveillance, Steve Mann mentions George Holliday's filming of police brutality against Rodney King in 1991. Holliday's 9-minute video was a key piece of evidence at the officer's criminal trial. Unsurprisingly, the jury still acquitted all of them, but as a result, Los Angeles erupted in protest because this footage made it clear that these officers committed a crime. The people knew it was non-negotiable. Darrigan Silver, a University of Denver film media studies and journalism professor, told Vox, "We want the ability to record things in public and to document them because it supports very important First Amendment ideals. The flip side of that is not everybody is doing this with good motives." Yes, there is a difference between recording ICE abducting your neighbor, which can hopefully be used as evidence in court and to rally the masses. There's a difference between that and recording an employee at Target because you didn't like the attitude she gave you. Silver suggests we develop some legal delineation between newsworthy versus non-newsworthy footage, but I unfortunately think it might be a little bit too subjective to decide what is newsworthy. And the result is that corrupt judges could rule against, say, the use of footage of a police officer brutalizing a teenager in court, claiming it to be non-newsworthy and not like ethically captured or whatever. But Elizabeth Lopato brings up the fact that even with newsworthy events, the recording footage isn't always used to incite justice anyway. As the example I gave, videos of cops misbehaving often lead to a slap on the wrist, if that. But normal people's lives can be upended. As I was writing this essay, I kept thinking about performativity, how the idea has been memed to oblivion, but also how it's an example of how cynical we've become as a culture. Think the performative male meme, a joke that implies that any metrosexual man wearing headphones, drinking a matcha, and holding a tote bag must be a guy who's trying to get attention from unsuspecting women. In general, we look down upon performativity because it implies the person's ability to manipulate the camera's gaze. They know that it's turned onto them and they're trying to profit off of it. But by judging people for engaging in a certain set of behaviors, we are still enforcing a panopticon. I'm sure there are people who will now think twice before ordering a matcha latte or before reading a book in public because they don't want to be part of a meme. I mean, for me personally, I don't even know if I stopped drinking pumpkin spice lattes one day because I was tired of people slinging around the term basic, or if my taste palette did actually just get more complex and nuanced. But I think these things, it can sink into someone's subconscious in a way that's not necessarily productive or representative of how humans form and lose interest in things. I mean, if you don't believe me, Foucault even mentions this when speaking of the Panopticon. He said, the Panopticon also does the work of a naturalist. It makes it possible to draw up differences, to assess characters, to draw up rigorous classifications. Pumpkin Spice Girl versus non-Pumpkin Spice Girl. And in relation to normal development, to distinguish laziness and stubbornness from incurable imbecility among workers. It makes it possible to note the aptitudes of each worker, compare the time he takes to perform a task, and if they are paid by the day, to calculate their wages. We are seeing people as simple archetypes instead of nuanced humans. It goes back to that quote that I read earlier about how people view the world as like them being the main character and everyone being an NPC or non-player character. It's like not willing or not being encouraged to see the depth that actually exists in every single person. The girl obsessed with journaling and Joan Didion must be pretentious in this worldview. It's not possible for her to be someone who is genuinely interested in these things. And of course, there absolutely are people who are curating an image that is not a genuine reflection of who they are. But it's interesting that we assume insincerity when we see certain clues. We're not willing to readily give strangers the benefit of the doubt. I think when I was really developing my interests back in like 2019, 2020, I was definitely like really compelled by the dark academia subculture. And I think part of the interests that I developed in that subculture were a little bit disingenuous. I mean, I didn't care that much about Greek mythology, but people love Greek mythology in the dark academia subculture. And so that was a bit of like a charade that I had to do. But ultimately, like, I was given a prescribed list of interests to be part of this subculture, like a list of interests that everyone seemed to like. And for a lot of them, I did end up liking them, you know? I'm sure that there's a performative man out there who has become a matcha convert. I mean, matcha tastes freaking amazing. So, like, how can I deny? How can I question someone's ability to enjoy it genuinely? A few months ago, Ocean Vuong explained how the surveillance culture of social media is harming young writers because they are scared of trying and coming across as cringe.
I think they are absolutely scared of judgment. And so, in fact, they perform cynicism because cynicism can be misread, as it often is, as intelligence. You know, you are disaffected, you are too cool, you've seen it all. And so they pull back. But in fact, they are deeply hungry for sincere, earnest effort. They often do it privately. They don't want to admit to each other that they're actually trying really hard to do what they want to do, but amongst their peers. I think sincerity is something we deeply hunger for, particularly young people, but we are embarrassed when sincerity is in the room.
I totally agree with what he's saying. I mean, look at the example of the guy asking a question in a classroom and getting blasted about it on TikTok. These spaces that are supposed to be carved out for learning are not even places where people feel safe to learn anymore. It's just not a normal way of living life to be watching over your shoulder all the time. And it's definitely not conducive to fostering a creative life, which always requires experimentation, terrible drafts, and constructive criticism. It's gotten especially bad with the way some of these content creators have evolved to throw integrity out the window in pursuit of eyeballs. But I think there are some things we can do to challenge this cycle. There was a period in time when I was only getting discourse videos on TikTok, probably because TikTok knew I was making discourse videos. But it ended up becoming such a negative space that I had to go through nature tags and just like a bunch of cute animal videos to reset my algorithm. And I honestly should start blocking accounts way more. But if we find ourselves coming across one of these videos, I think it's important to ask, what role is the person filming playing in this situation? What boundaries are they infringing on? What could their motives be for taking this video? Is it for virality? Are they a big channel and is this all for profit? What could they have said to de-escalate a situation instead of filming it? Sometimes it's like also so obvious when you just literally look at the account, like that guy Events For You filming Cara Delevingne. It's like, all of his videos are just following people around. I feel like he or his team have created a sense of like recognition maybe, and people are just trying to avoid him. And it comes off as rude because we are the viewers in this sense. Like we're seeing his point of view, looking through his camera, but you have to think about what they're looking at, you know? Camera duels. Like who are they looking at? Who's actually behind that camera? Anyways, guys, thank you so much for listening to me, watching this video as usual. Thank you for keeping long form alive, or specifically my long form videos alive. As I've said in like every previous video, I have a Substack where I share a newsletter. There's like a book club associated with it. I share recommendations, personal essays, things that I'm doing, and I'm available on, you know, every social media. Okay. I'll see you next time. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.